Within 24 hours of being born, nearly every baby in America is given 3 different pharmaceutical products. Supposing that God makes babies deficient. The 3 things given are hepatitis B vaccine, erythromycin eye ointment, and vitamin K. Today, I want to talk to you about vitamin K. What is it? Is it needed? Is it safe? What do you need to consider before deciding to consent to this treatment for your baby? We're going to talk about all those things and a whole lot more. So let's dig into it. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. Review time real quick today. I've got a review from Alyssa. Left back in December, she said, amazing. Finally found a podcast that is exactly what I've been looking for. I've been struggling with fear in my first pregnancy and all the stories people tell you, mostly negative. But this podcast has helped me fix my eyes on Jesus and find peace in Him for this journey. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for leaving me that review. That encourages me so much because that is exactly why I do this. It's just to try to get us Christian women to reground ourselves and where our truth comes from. If you have not left me a review yet, if you could just take a quick 30 seconds and head over to Apple Podcasts, leave me a quick 5-star written review. It would help me so much to find other moms like you who need this information, and it just encourages me. It just helps me to know that what I'm doing actually is helping somebody. Okay, so today's topic is one of the topics that I hear from you guys a lot about not really knowing what to do. It's a struggle because you think that God made us perfect, and yet here's another thing that the medical world is telling me that I need to give my baby as soon as it's born. Why? So today I want to dig into that. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of fluff at the first. We're just going to dig in and we're going to go through some just basic question and answer stuff, okay, to try to give you some information. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to make this decision for you. I'm here to give you some information and help you to have what you need to make a good decision for yourself and for your baby. So let's start with, what is vitamin K? And I'm not talking about what is the shot. I'm just saying, what is vitamin K in general? Vitamin K is an essential vitamin that is needed in the making of clotting factors. Okay, there's 2 types. There's K1 and there's K2. K1 is the type that is targeted by the shot that is given to most babies. K2 is a kind that kind of occurs later from digesting foods and things like that. That is not necessarily what the shot targets. In general, for adults, for kids, for everybody who's not a brand new baby, vitamin K is ingested in food, and it is also created in the gut by bacteria that normally lives there, called the microbiome. That could be, just kind of foreshadowing what we're going to talk about, that could be another reason, or a reason, why babies don't have a lot of it to start with, because their gut has not started digestion yet. It just hasn't happened yet. So let's talk about, why is it low in babies? Ultimately, we just don't know. There's no really good way to know. But what we do know is that all babies are low in it, no matter where they're born, no matter how healthy or unhealthy their mother is. All these factors don't seem to have an impact on babies' vitamin K levels when they're born. All babies tend to be low. And now understand, when I say they're low, I'm saying they're low compared to adults, because that is what this whole thing arises from, is that vitamin K levels in babies tends to be a whole lot lower than it is in adults, which isn't all that unexpected, right? But, as a believer in the fact that we have an intelligent creator, an intelligent designer, I personally think that there must be a reason for this, okay? And many, by the way, who are not believers also believe that, because If there was not a reason for this, why would every single baby be low? Some would be normal, right? Or what is seen by normal by the scientific model. All babies are seen to be low compared to adult levels. But even though all babies are low, only about 1 in 16,000 ends up having a problem from it. And this could be related to a lot of different things. We don't really know why the babies that do have the problems from it have those problems. Could it be related, like I said earlier, to the fact that they haven't started developing their own vitamin K yet, and maybe something like antibiotics that their mom received in labor, or maybe they received after birth, then further delays the development of that microbiome so that they have even less vitamin K maybe than most babies? Could it be a possible liver problem that hasn't been diagnosed? It could be. We just don't know. But it could be that these levels are low for a reason. There's lots of different thought out there about what this could be. There are so many decisions that you have to make during pregnancy and birth that you shouldn't have to make, but you do. We live in a world that has medicalized a beautiful, natural process, and I know it can feel overwhelming to try to sort through it all, but you do not have to walk this road alone. I created my online Christian childbirth education course to give you all the information that you need to make solid decisions you can feel confident about while helping you to honor the process God created you to walk through without feeling like you're an accident waiting to happen. I leave no stone unturned in this 8-module course with about 20 hours of education. When you join the course, you'll also get access to a monthly meeting with me where I answer your questions live. You won't have to worry about getting answers that are filtered through practice policy or insurance directives. If you don't know me, I'm Lori Morris, and I'm a certified nurse midwife with over 20 years of experience as a nurse and midwife in both the medical and natural birth world. So in this course, you'll get my experience combined with a Christian perspective without an agenda other than to help you have a beautiful birth God's way, like you deserve. You simply can't find another course with this kind of balance out there. To learn more or to sign up, go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com and click on the online Christian Childbirth Education course button. There is no other course out there like this. There are relaxation tracks in it to use before and during labor. There's tons of information about how to stay low risk while navigating the onslaught of standard medical interventions that are going to be offered to you during your pregnancy. There's affirmation cards to help you stay focused both during pregnancy and during birth. There's postpartum information. There's information about how to establish breastfeeding and so much more. Plus, there's the live question and answer sessions every month to cover anything that you might need beyond the course content. You will be prepared for pregnancy, birth, and beyond when you take this course. So come join me. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com right now. One that I heard not too long ago for the first time that the more I think about it, I think this might be it. Again, we can't prove it, but I think this might be it. Is that if vitamin K levels were high, if they were at an adult level, then the blood of this newborn baby could not flow in the same way to the same places that it can immediately after birth with this low clotting factor. And why does this matter? Well, baby's blood is full of stem cells. And stem cells are cells that can become anything and can fix pretty much anything when they can get to the right place. So we want that blood to be able to get everywhere in that baby's body, anywhere that maybe there was some damage during birth or anywhere where there's things that just need to be cleaned up and repaired after birth, right? So if we're giving vitamin K, is it possible that we are causing a level that's so high that these stem cells can no longer do what they were designed to do when the levels were low as God made them be? Possibly so. We just don't know. And I hope that all made sense. It makes sense in my head, but sometimes when I try to explain it, it doesn't always just flow that well. But hopefully you're seeing what I'm getting. We know baby's blood has a lot of stem cells. We know what stem cells can do. So we want that blood to be able to get everywhere to do that job, right? Is it possible that we are correcting a situation that may exist for a reason just because we don't know why or that it exists for a reason? We don't know it. We think we found a problem, so hey, we humans in all of our wisdom need to fix something, right? Something that God made perfect and made it exist for a reason. Since all babies have what is considered to be this low vitamin K, could it be that it is low because it's supposed to be? Another note to think about it, breast milk is considered to be low in vitamin K. And that is true for everyone of all incomes and all nutritional statuses as well. So is it possible that babies need to have a vitamin K lower than we would expect them to have? Another thought on the breast milk issue, it's actually possibly wrong that we even think that breast milk has low vitamin K, because when a lot of this study was done was back when really bad information was being given out about breastfeeding, and women were told to, only breastfeed 10 minutes on one side and 10 minutes on the other. And so if they were testing milk without getting the full sample and not getting that hind milk where the fat is, then they were going to get low levels, because vitamin K is a fat-soluble vitamin, and so it's going to be in higher amounts in that hind milk. Maybe they were testing the wrong thing. Again, we just don't fully understand it. We don't fully know, and just because we don't know and we don't understand it doesn't mean that something is wrong. One interesting point to think about. God told Abraham to circumcise his descendants, and the males at that time, on the 8th day of life, which is when vitamin K is said to peak. We're going to talk in a minute on what the classic late bleeding, all the different kind of bleedings are, but I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. If we're born with low vitamin K levels, and I say if, because maybe they're not low, maybe they're what God meant for them to be, and if he told them to circumcise their baby boys on the 8th day of life, it seems to suggest that God knew that babies had low vitamin K levels, and he did it for a reason. And he was instructing Abraham to do it at a time that he knew would be a safer time. Now, don't take that to be me saying go circumcise your baby boys, by the way. I did cover circumcision, I don't know, a year or so ago. You can go back and listen to all that. It was a 4-part series, episodes 65 through 68. Go listen to all that. That's a whole different topic. But the fact is, at that time, it was an instruction that was given, and that is the time that he told him to do it, on day 8. And he didn't say, go get your vitamin K shot first. No, he just said, wait to the 8th day. There must have been some wisdom there. So why does all this matter, though? A lot of this is coming from the medical model's perspective, because I know, by the way, that that's where a lot of your confusion comes from, because they tell you that your baby needs something, and in your head you're going, but why? This baby was just born. Why does it already need something? And so it creates this confusion and uncertainty. So I'm going to try to address all of this in a way that gives you the information you need to understand both sides of things, okay? I want you to be able to make a good decision on your own and to have all the information you need to be able to do that. So that's my goal here. My goal here is not to tell you what to do or tell you what's right or wrong, but to give you the information so you can decide. So why does it matter? Because they're missing this vitamin K element, supposedly missing. Again, as I say this, when I say they're low or I say they're missing, we've already established that maybe they're not, but I'm going to say it from the medical model's perspective. They are low in this vitamin K element, which is needed to make a clotting factor. And so if bleeding occurs in these babies when they have this perceived low vitamin K level, then their bodies would not be able to stop a bleed if it were to occur. Okay? This happens very rarely. As I mentioned before, only about 1 in 16,000 babies has a problem with this. So that means that 15,999 have no problem. But of course, if that one baby is yours, then it's a big, big deal. Now, there's different kinds of bleeding that arise from low vitamin K. There's early, classic, and late. The shot is believed to have impact on the classic onset, which happens between the 2nd and 7th day of life, and maybe some impact on the late onset, which happens after the 1st week of life. It doesn't really help the early onset, because usually that arises from some other issue besides just the vitamin K problem. If a baby has a vitamin K deficiency bleed, as it's called, By the way, it used to be called the hemorrhagic disease of the newborn. Now they call it vitamin K deficiency bleed. Is there a reason for that? I think so. It's to kind of program you to think that that's the cause of it. It may or may not be. But if a baby does have a bleed perceived to be because of the low vitamin K levels, that baby will likely be admitted to the neonatal intensive care unit for treatment. And most of these bleeds are treatable, but a very small number out of that 1 in 16,000, then you take all of those babies, and a small number of those babies, which is an even lower percentage, will die. Again, most babies don't, but if it's yours, it's a big deal, and I understand that. It's really hard to make this decision without being in a position of fear, but I want you to have the information so you can make a strong decision and do the best that you can. The most dangerous type of bleeding is an intracranial hemorrhage. That's a bleed in the baby's brain, and the reason that that's the most dangerous is because you can't see it, and there are places in the baby's brain where a lot of bleeding can happen before you realize it. That can lead to brain damage or, very rarely again, death. But most bleeds in otherwise healthy babies resolve, and usually the babies are okay. Usually, bleeding is reversible by giving vitamin K as a treatment. Even if you haven't given vitamin K on the front end, you can usually give it, not always, but usually you can give it, and that will resolve the bleed, and there's usually no other problems, as long as there's no other health issues going on, like as I mentioned earlier, a liver disorder that maybe hasn't been diagnosed. So how often does this hemorrhagic disease of the newborn or vitamin K deficiency bleeding happen? I gave you a number earlier. The problem is there aren't any good studies with placebos, so it's really hard to truly know how helpful the shot is versus not getting the shot, because at this point, they can't even do a study because because vitamin K is seen as safe by the medical world, and it's seen as unethical not to give it to a certain group of people and risk bad things happening to them when they believe that vitamin K is needed. So the studies are pretty much never going to be done. But that being said, before this all became a thing and before the shot was common, there were some estimates that said it was 1 in 10,000, others said 1 in 14,000, others said 1 in 25,000. So they kind of just settled in on 1 in 16,000. But no matter which one of those numbers you pick, it's far less than 1%. The average is maybe 1 in 11,000, maybe 1 in 16,000. It just depends on where you look. But no matter which one of those numbers you look at, it's less than 1%. So what is the vitamin K shot? The vitamin K shot is a synthetic version of vitamin K1 dissolved in an oil that's in a form that when it's given in a shot into the muscle, it creates what's called a depot. It's like a little blob, for lack of a better term, in the muscle where that vitamin K is held and where it's slowly released over several weeks. Okay, so the active ingredient in these shots is the vitamin K. I want to read to you, I printed out the inserts. Remember, again, you can find these inserts from the CDC and read them for yourself. I wanted to read to you the other ingredients. You may, if you have done a lot of research on some of the shots that are given beyond this, you may have heard some of these ingredients before. Take note of this and go look them up, read about them, see if this is something that you want to be injected into your baby. And I'm going to butcher this name, by the way, because I just can't quite figure out how the right way to pronounce it is, but I'm going to do the best I can. Each 0.5 milliliter phytonadione injectable emulsion, USP, contains the following inactive ingredients: 10 milligrams polysorbate 80, 10.4 milligrams propylene glycol, 0.17 milligrams sodium acetate anhydrous, and 0.00002 milliliters glacial acetic acid. Okay, those are the ingredients. Again, you can find this. I'll put the link down below, but you can find this yourself and read it for yourself, because I'd love for you to go research those ingredients. So that's what a vitamin K shot is. Why is it given to most babies? Again, because babies are perceived to be low in vitamin K in relation to the expected adult levels, and it is seen as an effective way to prevent hemorrhagic disease of the newborn or vitamin K deficiency bleeding. It's been documented that it's effective, and the medical world sees the vitamin K shot as a simple fix for a preventable issue. It was first discovered way back in 1944 by a Swedish doctor who figured out that giving vitamin K reduced the number of babies who had this type of bleeding. So how effective is the shot? Well, it's seen as pretty effective. It brings the incidence of bleeding from 1 in 10,000-ish to 1 in 100,000. So that's a significant drop, and so that's why the medical world sees that it's effective and thinks that all babies should get it. So what are the risks of vitamin K? Well, there's always a risk of an injection site issue, like an infection or something like that where the shot is given. There's some evidence in past studies that vitamin K may have caused cancer, like leukemia. These studies are very hard to interpret. They're very, it's really hard to draw the line for causation. But just because we can't draw the line doesn't mean we need to overlook it, and it is something that you need to consider. So the type of cancer that vitamin K is usually believed to be associated with is leukemia. There's also some belief that vitamin K or the vitamin K shot may be associated with a greater chance of having jaundice, which leads to a whole bunch of other interventions for your baby. But again, it's very hard to know actual risk because now that vitamin K is seen as beneficial by the medical system, controlled studies will never be done to compare a placebo with the shot to know what is actually happening to the babies that get vitamin K versus the babies that didn't get it. It'll never be done because it's seen as unethical. Another concern that brings risk is that it's thought that the dose that's given in the shot is much higher than it would actually be needed in an infant. It's more of an adult dosage, but because it's in that depot, they think that that's okay because it's going to be slowly delivered over time. But we really don't know. Okay, there's just a whole lot of unknowns here. So what are the benefits? If we looked at the risk, what are the benefits? Well, the benefits are that it does seem to significantly reduce the risk of a bleed that would occur from having low vitamin K levels. What are some alternatives? You've probably heard that giving oral vitamin K is an option. The problem with the oral vitamin K idea, well, there's a few problems with it. One, it's not standardized, so it's really hard to know what the dosage is. The preparations are different, so some are more effective than others. Back in 1944, the same doctor who discovered the shot tested giving oral vitamin K to babies, and his studies showed that babies were less likely to die from a hemorrhage than those who didn't get it, but they weren't as low. How do I word this? Their likelihood wasn't as low as when they got the shot. But what are some alternative ways to give this oral dose? Well, you can give one dose of oral vitamin K. You can give several oral doses over a span of weeks. Just one thing to note, if you should decide to go into doing an oral supplementation, which I'm not advocating for or against, and I'm also not going to give you dosages because there's so many different ones. But if you do decide to go that route, you need to always make sure you're giving that supplementation with a feed. So if you're breastfeeding, give it at the same time as the feed because vitamin K is fat soluble. And so if there is no fat present when you're giving the vitamin K, then it's not going to be absorbed very well. Another consideration for a type of alternative, and honestly, I don't really think this is truly an alternative. I feel like this should happen all the time anyway. But in hospitals, a lot of times the baby's cord is clamped almost immediately after birth. That's not optimal. That's not how God designed it. There is still a good portion of the baby's blood in that cord, which could have more of the vitamin K. It certainly has more of the stem cells because all of the blood in the baby's placenta and in the baby's cord is the baby's blood. So whatever is in there is the baby's and the baby needs it. So having optimal cord clamping, which is waiting for the cord to be completely white, flat, no pulse, no blood present anymore, could be seen as an alternative because that's giving the baby its best chance to have everything that it's supposed to have in its body. There is no rush to cut the cord and clamp it. And some people will say, oh, but the mom, and by the way, when I say some people, even some doctors will say this, and which shows you that they fundamentally don't understand the physiology of pregnancy, the anatomy and physiology of pregnancy. They will say that the mom is going to bleed out if you don't clamp the cord. Well, that's impossible because all of the blood that's in the placenta is actually the baby's blood, not the mom's blood. The mom's blood and the baby's blood don't ever mix there. And so all of the blood that's in the placenta belongs to the baby, and all of it, if it needs to be given the chance to get back to the baby. A good kind of illustration for you to understand why this matters. Think about the blood that is currently in your heart. Okay, now obviously, if we cut your heart out, you're instantly dead. I get all that. But go with me here, okay? If you were to clamp all of the vessels to your heart right now, all at once, some of your blood is currently inside of your heart. And so the rest of your body does not have that blood to work with, right? So if the heart was a placenta, and again, I get you'd be dead. I get that. That's not the point. The point is when you clamp the cord for the placenta, it's kind of like the heart. There is blood in that placenta that belongs to the baby. It was just being pumped through there at that moment. And so at that moment, that blood was not in the baby's body. It was out in the placenta getting the nourishment it needed to bring it back to the baby's body. So you need to leave that cord unclamped to give all of that blood time to get back to the baby before it's ever clamped. And the way you know all the blood's back is when there's no blood in the cord, it's flat, it's floppy, all those juicy vessels you used to be able to see, you can't see anymore. Okay. When you do that, you give the baby its best chance to have as much vitamin K as it possibly can, as many stem cells as it possibly can, and all those kind of things. Another alternative is increasing maternal vitamin K intake. And while that seems good and it seems like it would help, there's again belief that vitamin K doesn't cross a placenta very well for some reason. Again, probably a reason that God put there. But it doesn't hurt for you to increase your vitamin K intake anyway, because you need your vitamin K levels to be good and high after birth so that your blood will clot properly. And the best place to get vitamin K is dark green leafy vegetables. But remember, again, and you can get through supplementation too, by the way. But again, you must be taking it at the same time as something that's fatty with good, healthy fats, or it won't absorb well because it is fat soluble. Okay, so keep that in mind. And another thing to consider that could be thought of as an alternative is to never arbitrarily cut off a breastfeeding session simply because of the time on a clock. Okay, don't cut it off at 10 minutes or 15 minutes and switch or whatever that you've been told like that, because that hind milk is where most of the fat is, and this is for nutrition in general, but it's also going to be where most of the vitamin K is. So you want to make sure that your baby is draining your breast before you offer the other side so that that baby gets all of the vitamin K and all the fat in that good rich hind milk. Okay, I know that was a lot. Now I want to talk to you about my concerns about this whole situation. First concern about that I want to talk about is the oral vitamin K. My concern, I actually, with one of my babies, I bought the oral vitamin K and I was going to give it. But before the baby was born, I got to thinking about the fact that babies' guts, or the gut of a baby, it sounds funny to say baby's guts, their gut is not designed to digest anything but breast milk for at least 6 months, if not longer. So if we are putting in an artificial version of vitamin K based on something that we've been told is a problem, are we causing other problems? I don't know. And I became uncomfortable with that because I thought, no, God didn't mean for me to give some drops that were made in some factory somewhere. He made my baby perfect. He gave me perfect breast milk. So why am I doing this? I'm not so sure that my baby's body is ready for this. That's my own personal concern. Okay. And again, these things are my concerns, how I look at this. You have to think about it yourself and make your own decisions. Another concern of mine, as I've alluded to before, is are we blocking some essential function that God put there in an effort to soothe our human need to just do something? We've just got to do something to fix this. It's something that we see is wrong, but maybe it's not actually wrong. Is that something that we're doing in all of our quote wisdom in this medical model? Or is this something we need to leave alone because God made it that way? Another thing to think about There is no money to be made if vitamin K is suddenly considered unneeded. This is a huge industry. Now, vitamin K isn't one of the most expensive things that are given, but if you think about the fact that every single baby that's born gets this shot, that's a whole lot of shots and it's a whole lot of money. And even if you go the oral route, it's still a lot of money. There's no money to be made in just relying on God's design. And now that they've got it there and these pharmaceutical companies have you needing this, quote, needing this at birth, among the other two things that you're supposedly needing at birth, that's a big cash cow. I can't quite get past the ethical issue there. And then finally, it really bothers me that they have changed the name of this bleeding that happens in a very, very small number of newborns from hemorrhagic disease of the newborn to vitamin K deficiency bleed. That to me automatically says they're trying to further instill fear of a thing that they have the solution for, but maybe it's not something that we need to be as afraid of. Now, there are scare stories out there, and I get that. I fell victim to one of them because if you've heard about the story in Nashville that happened around 2014, which is when my first was born, there were 4 babies that died, or I think they all died, or at the very least they were very sick at Vanderbilt. I lived in Nashville at the time, who supposedly were all natural births that were seen as low risk births to have a bleed like this. And there was 4, all of it, all at once. And so they put the news story out and, it got real scary to think about. Like, well, maybe this is something that would be easy to prevent and I should just do it. Could I live with myself if I didn't? And I just decided to give it to my first baby. I'll be honest, I don't really remember. I know I didn't for my third. I can't remember if I did or not for my second. But point being, it's easy to fall into that, even when you have all the information. It's easy to be influenced by fear. But my challenge to you is to gather this information and try your best to make an informed decision that is not based on fear. Go back and listen to this, think about it, go to some of the show notes. And by the way, a lot of the information that I shared with you today, I don't know why I didn't say this earlier, came from this book, Vitamin K in the Newborn. It may be backwards on the video, but it's called Vitamin K in the Newborn. It's by Dr. Sarah Wickham. I've referred to her books before. It is a very good book. It's very balanced and it gives you a whole lot of information. And I'd encourage you, if you're still on the fence and you still don't really know what to do, go grab that book because it will give you even more balanced information from which to make this decision. I hope this has helped you today. If you have more questions or you just want to talk about it, be sure to leave a comment either over on YouTube or over on our Facebook group. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, there's a link to that in the show description as well. We'd love to have you join us. And I look forward to seeing you right back here next week.
Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.